Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the chair of the board, Elizabeth Samuelson.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see you all here, and thank you all for coming tonight. I think that you will find that the strategic plan will affect all of us, and I hope that you are as excited about it as we are on the board. To give you a little bit of an overview of the evening, first I'm going to just be talking a little bit about some highlights of the school year so far, and then give an introduction to how we came up with this strategic plan, our strategic planning process. And then Mike is going to present the strategic plan. And then after that, we are going to have the panel be open for any questions that you have. And I want to introduce the panel. Right here we have Helen Barrett, who is a trustee and has been the chair of the Strategic Plan Committee on Athletics and looking at the future of athletics at Shorecrest. And then on the far side, we have Michael Gillis, our new Director of Advancement. He'll be here to answer any questions you have about the Transform campaign. And then Roderick Fludd, our new Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, who we're so excited to have here at Shorecrest. And then we have, I think Will Conroy is sitting next. Will Conroy, who is here to talk about the building and the relocation and everything that's happening during the Transform building project that we have going on. And then we have Corey Gaffney, who is here to talk about the financial sustainability of Shorecrest. And to also let you all know, we are going to be having a second community forum like this in the beginning of the year, like January, I think in January, where we're going to be actually specifically talking about the finances of Shorecrest, our tuition, and the financial health of the school. So if you have a lot of questions about that, know that we are going to be going into more in-depth conversation about that in the beginning of the school year, in the beginning of the calendar year. So just talk about some highlights. We are off to a great start of the 2017-18 calendar year. If you all read Mike's e-bike article this week, Shorecrest was rated number 11 in the top schools in Florida in the niche survey. This is from 13th place last year, and we are number 1 in Pinellas County and number 2 in the Tampa Bay area. The experiential school is booming and bigger than ever. Sherry Daniele, who is right here, is our new head of the experiential school, and she is doing a great job building relationships with students, with families. She is also forming a strong, cohesive teaching team that is focused on child-centered learning. And Sherry said that when she came to Shorecrest, right afterwards is when Irma was coming, and she was so impressed by how the community really bonded together, and the outreach and support that she felt from the community during and post Irma was just incredible for her. So for all of you who have kids in the lower school, I am sure you're all continuously amazed by the innovation, the growth, and the child-centered learning approach there. When I asked Dr. B to send me some highlights, I could actually spend a whole hour just discussing the highlights that she sent me. So some of the things that I was impressed about, first, that the lower school still continues with great traditions like Poetry in the Park and Fall Festival. But there are so many new and great things going on in the lower school. First, I was really impressed that there was a grant award to the lower school where they now have they installed a hydroponics in their garden. And every single grade in the lower school has specific topics for project-based learning that each grade is focused on. Also, the teachers have embraced mindfulness and teach mindfulness to our youngest kids in the classroom, which is just really incredible. And they also changed the schedule of the lower school so that it's a 6-day schedule, which lowers the time that the kids have to do transitions and actually gives them more time to spend more in-depth research into the topics they're talking about. Jonathan Davis in the middle school continues to be innovative in their utilization of space. They have redesigned the Share of a Zook Center so that there is more space for project-based learning. And they also have looked at different curriculums throughout the middle school to make sure that it encompasses project-based learning and co-curriculum. So in the 7th grade, they are combining history and science and looking at the history of disease throughout American history. And it's really interesting because they're looking at this and then they're going to be doing a service project involved with this, and they really are looking at a multifaceted approach to learning. And then in the 5th grade this week, they have Drop Everything in STEAM. And this was such a success last year, and it really focuses on design thinking and problem solving. Now, Tom in the upper school has so many things to share about, but one of the most amazing things this year is that we have 5 National Merit semifinalists and 5 commended scholars. And just to give you a comparison, at Canterbury and Northeast High, there were none. At Tampa Prep, they had 1. At Jesuit and at St. Pete High, including the IB program, they only had 2. So really, for Shorecrest to have 5 National Merit semifinalists and 5 commended scholars is really impressive. And then if you look at athletics this fall, it has been a really nice season for so many of our athletes. The middle school has had their first winning season in football in many years. The varsity volleyball team made it to the regional semifinals, and this is a young team. There are no graduating seniors on this team. The girls cross-country team and one of the boys varsity runners all made it to regionals. The golf team and swim and dive team all made it to regionals, and 5 boys and 5 girl swimmers and 1 boy and 1 girl diver all made it to states. And both of the divers actually got medals at state meet. So if you've noticed, there is service learning going on throughout Shorecrest, and Diego is here tonight, and I really appreciate all the work he does. And his goal is to have a service learning curriculum throughout every grade at Shorecrest. So right now in 4th grade and 5th grade, they're combined with high school and working with Kind Mouse to collect food and organize food for people in need. And the 3rd grade has adopted a project for Keep Pinellas Beautiful. The middle school is heavily involved with Relay for Life, but Jonathan was telling me how they really keep service learning as part of their curriculum. They look at certain things that are going on in the curriculum and then find a service project that is appropriate for the students to focus on. And then right now in high school, all of the high school students are figuring out what they're going to do for the great service week that the high school has. This Saturday night, there is an amazing theater performance, the Fall Showcase, and all the theater students in the high school perform in the Fall Showcase. And the week after that, all the theater students are going to be competing at the district thespian competition, and we are clearly going to send some of those acts to state. And then another thing to really be excited about at Shorecrest, last year we had 86% parent participation in the annual fund. And right now the annual fund is doing great. We actually have another phone-a-thon tomorrow night. Our goal this year is to be over 90%. But this is an amazing statistic. Since 2013-14, 100% of the faculty and staff have given to the annual fund. And since 2005-2006, 100% of the Board of Trustees have given. With all those highlights being said, it is still the mission of the board to always think of the future of the school. It is the mission, one of our biggest missions is to strategic plan. So we can never be satisfied with status quo. We continuously look for improvement, innovation, and collaboration so that our kids have the best experience here at Shorecrest and they are the most prepared when they leave here. So I'm going to talk now about our strategic planning process that the board went through. So the board started this process 2 years ago in the fall of 2015. We hired Heads Up Consulting, and we worked with their founder and their senior consultant, Pat Bassett. He has had 47 years experience in the independent school industry. He was a teacher, he was the head of school, and he was the president of the NAIS, the National Association of Independent Schools. Throughout the fall and spring of 2015 and 2016, we tried to survey as many constituencies of the Shorecrest community. And that was so that we could get as much information as we could to put into the strategic plan. So we gave surveys to parents, middle school students, upper school students, faculty, staff, administration, board, and alumni. And then there were some focus groups held on campus of parents, faculty and staff, and of the board. And then we formed a strategic plan committee, which was comprised of alumni, faculty, administrators, board members, and parents. And there were 36 members on this committee, and then there was an executive committee. So this group met in January of 2016, and the first look was to look at the inside out. So we looked at all their surveys. How do we feel about ourselves? What are our strengths and weaknesses here at Shorecrest? And we looked at all that information. Then in February, we did another workshop where we met again, and we looked at the outside in. We looked at all the trends, the national trends in independent schools, in higher education. We looked at demographics, and we looked at outside factors that could impact Shorecrest. So putting this all together, we narrowed it down to 5 strategic imperatives that Mike will be presenting, and then the panel here will be answering questions about. Our vision is to create a legacy of inclusion, innovation, and transformational education that ignites the potential in all learners. One of my favorite parts of the process that we did when we were formulating the strategic plan was to come up with the things at Shorecrest that will not change. And those things are a strong teacher and family relationships, emphasis on student success and achievement, student-centered curriculum and pedagogy, a supportive community, commitment to global cultural competency outcomes, and high levels of participation in successful athletic and art. With those things in mind, I welcome you all here tonight, and I want to hand the floor over to Mike so that he can present our strategic plan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I trust this community realizes how fortunate we are to have a board that cares so much for our current day students, but also keep focused on the future. Elizabeth, you are an outstanding chair, and we thank you for all of the dedication you give. The strategic initiatives come under 5 major areas. Culture and community is the first one. And as we were planning the strategic plan, we realized that for each one of these areas, we could come up with 10, 20, 30 different ideas to strengthen culture and community. But what our consultants asked us to do were identify 3 from every area. 3 major ones, work on them, fix them, embed them into the culture of the school, and then move on to new ones. And so the 3 that we've selected in this area, the first one is to encourage interaction of students of all age groups. Currently, right now, Shorecrest has a big pep rally in the fall, and the upper school students come and get the lower school students. We have a committee that Kate Merritt and Dominique Kraft are working on to try to find multiple times during the year where experiential school through upper school students are working together in a house system very much like a boarding school. We also have Karen Moore working on a committee that is looking how to provide services to parents, to acknowledge the busy schedules you have, and to say, how can we support you so that you can be more involved in the school? The third area of building stronger community has to do with the committee that Helen Barrett has worked on. And we hope you'll ask questions about this. It is how can athletics serve as a way to build community pride? And so we've been working on that. The second area that also supports community, but also is a major strategic initiative, is to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. In all surveys, from all constituents, this has always been, or at least for the last 2 strategic plans, a top priority area for our school. We hired a director of diversity and inclusion, Roderick. Strategy number one in this area is to make sure that for all positions that we hire, that we are trying to seek candidates who represent diversity, so that the pool expands as we're doing our hiring. The second area has to do with professional development for administration, for faculty, staff, students, and the parent community. Roderick has been taking the lead on that. And the final area in this area has to do with expanding the Global Scholars Initiative. It currently is an interesting and strong program in our upper school, but we want to see it move from the middle school, lower school, and experiential school. The third strategic imperative has to do with innovation in teaching and learning. Certainly something, the highest priority that our parents noted in the survey. There are three major initiatives there. The first one is to develop a culture that rewards teachers and administrators who initiate innovation. Anna Baralt, our Director of Technology, is leading a committee in that area. The second area is led by Dr. Lisa Bianco, and that is to create a Center for Teaching and Learning to make sure that professional development opportunities that our own faculty want to provide, but people from outside the community can offer it here on the Shorecrest campus. The third area is to make sure, and it's being headed by the school heads, is to make sure that we continue to develop signature programs. Very much like the program for medical sciences, we believe that there'll be a similar program in the upper school dealing with technology and robotics in the coming year, and our hope is that all schools will develop those kinds of signature programs. Clearly, a top priority for our school is to continue to focus on the success and well-being of our students. Our three prime initiatives in this area are, number one, to identify the areas of greatest stress for our students and make sure that there are programs in place to help reduce and minimize the stress. We know that we've made enormous progress in the last 5 years in the upper school, middle school, and lower school. We want to continue in that area. The second area in this one is to develop new courses and options for students primarily in the upper school. Any of you who are upper school parents realize that Tom Dillow and his faculty already this year have launched a number of new, unique programs to allow students to go in depth in areas that matter to them. And finally, in this area is to develop and advance an advisory program that supports personal development, primarily of the students in the upper school. We are quite pleased with the lower school, experiential school, and middle school advisory programs. We want to expand this in the upper school. The final imperative has to do with financial equilibrium, affordability, and sustainability. Michael Gillis, our new Director of Advancement, has the charge to ensure the Transform campaign, the campaign that has been in a totally silent but quiet phase and is shown here on the screen, that it comes to pass and that we get to break ground in the coming year. Along with that, Michael and I are working on ways that we can expand programs and expand an emphasis on our alumni. And the final area, being led by Karen Moore, our CFO, has to do with a cost analysis of how we currently operate our middle school and upper school, trying to be sure that we're maximizing the use of facilities and maximizing the use of our staff. Our hope here this evening is that Elizabeth's points and my points will give you some things to ask questions of. We have a panel in front of you. We have members of the administration out in the audience. There are microphones here in the aisles. We welcome your questions and ideas and thoughts. Thank you so much for being here. Who's going to open the meeting? So the question is, what is in place to measure success in meeting these goals? So the strategic plan was completed over the summer, and the committees were formed during that time. Part of the job of each committee is to create benchmarks that we will help determine as success. We know that 2 years from now, we will be surveying this community again and trying to get feedback from you on a broad scale of how we're doing. But Each area is so specific that each committee will be asked to try to build measures of accountability. How do we show innovation to different kinds of learners?
Our fear is that if we give every kid an iPad, if we don't make changes in how we teach, it becomes a $1,000 pencil, which would be a problem and a waste of everyone's money. I'll let the other administrators chime in when they feel like they want to, but it's really about shifting control of learning from teachers to more of a shared experience with students. I think about my middle school experience. We came in, we sat down in rows, we took notes till our hand hurt. We knew we got really good at school when we could write for 45 minutes and our hand didn't hurt. I can't do that anymore, thankfully. But now it's about teaching kids how to deal with uncertainty, having them generate the questions that they want to discover. One of the things I'm really excited about in 7th grade, as Elizabeth talked about, this new 7th grade project about the impact of disease across American history to present day. If you ask the 7th grade teachers about the project, they'll tell you all about it. And you say, what's the culminating event? And they say, we don't know. The students will be planning that. That is a really big innovation. We know from lots of different industries that it's not about sitting at your cubicle by yourself, plugging away. It's about working in collaborative teams, solving problems, and even better, identifying the problem that we haven't thought of yet. And so that's what we're trying to work on for our students. It starts with the play center. And I mean, it looks like they're just having fun, but Sherry can tell you all the neuron development that's happening with the shaving cream table. and it ends up with, Tom's class on tribalism and what is the nature of humanity and why do we create tribes and how do we solve that problem. Of course, I wish Tom had that answer and he could just tell everyone, but it's really about a shift in thought process from we have all of the information, you write this down, to let's explore and learn together. Is that a good start?
That's a great start. I think it's about offering assessments that move away from multiple choice question type questions or tests to authentic kinds of assessments where we're asking students to engage in real world processes and answer real world kinds of problems in interdisciplinary ways in the high school, for instance. So that there's broad-based questions that can't be answered just through the use of one disciplinary model, but that you have to actually use a number of disciplines to answer that central problem or question. That's what lots of universities are seeking. It's what's happening in lots of universities as well. And it's actually what happens in the real world. We have structured schools into these departments, history and art and English, etc. But the real world isn't structured like that, of course. And so the more we engage in those kinds of real world problems and have our students thinking in those ways, I think the more effective we are in preparing them for college and that real world too. So I think it's about, again, building authentic kinds of assessments that don't require any kind of technology. The technology is there only to facilitate that kind of learning. It's not an end in itself. And so I think that's the purpose, and that's what we've been working towards. I think it's a great question, and it gets at the heart of, frankly, what I think has been an epidemic in independent schools for a while now. And that's the increasing numbers of our high school students and middle school students, frankly, too, who are dealing with enormous amounts of stress and anxiety and even clinical depression at levels that we haven't seen before. And the interesting thing, of course, is obviously we hate that as parents. It's enormously sad and concerning. But as educators, too, the research on how that impacts a kid's ability to learn is so powerful. Stuff we didn't know before, within the last decade really, when they've done scans of the brain. And we know now that even the subtlest kinds of stresses will have an enormous impact on a student's ability to learn. And so schools across the country should be making that actually their number one priority, I would argue. And I've seen that in all of our divisions, in all of our schools. In the upper school, we've changed the schedule. We've had conversations about APs and the push. I think one of the most important pieces here is an open and transparent conversation about what our school's about. And that means a conversation about the extent to which it's a transactional process. In other words, a means to an end only, a means to get to Harvard, Princeton, or Yale. There is nothing that has caused more stress and pressure on kids and on parents than the doors that are gradually closing further and further. on access to those sort of Ivy League schools. That's a phenomenon that's happening, and it's very real, but it's also putting an enormous amount of stress and pressure on kids and parents in schools. So I think one of the things we're talking about a lot is mindfulness training. How do we have our kids centered? Creating programs for stress relief during the academic day. How do we make sure that we give them a brain break between classes so they're not running from one class to the next? It's open conversations about homework loads. It's challenging traditional interpretations of academic rigor about that more is always better, for instance, and are there opportunities for deeper learning at a more reasonable pace for our students as well. So those are the conversations that are happening now, and I think that the committee is starting to look at some of those things.
Another area, if I could comment, where when we talk about stress and that committee's dealing with on the whole mindfulness topic, we realize we can't pin stress on one area of the lives of our children. But we do know that the continuous use of social media adds enormous amount of stress into our kids' life. They can never be alone because they're always in contact with friends in social media. So there's discussions that when we open up our new dining facility as a part of our community commons, that will be a technology-free zone. That when people come to eat, when people come to meet, they cannot have their iPads, they cannot have their cell phones, they need to be in conversation with each other. And we're convinced that it not only will heighten social interaction, but it will be a place where a kid can be free from the harassment of constant social media.
Part of what the athletic committee came up with is to really integrate intramurals again and to do exactly what you're talking about. A lot of the people in the committee came up with, we need a bat boy for baseball. We need water boys or girls for soccer or football. So you integrate the entire campus and to exactly do what you were talking about. I had the privilege of interviewing some middle school student athletes who actually play on varsity, and they talk about a privilege. They considered it a privilege to be able to play with juniors and seniors. They were seeing and making comments about one particular young lady made a comment about a young lady who was probably going to play volleyball at Clemson. And she said, I get to play with her. I'm going to be that. I'm not only going to stop at where I'm at right now, I'm going to work as hard and emulate everything that this student does so that I can accomplish that. Some of these kids are so dialed in because of that inspiration.
See the building furthest to the south that's in the rendering? That is the new transform building, 60,000 square feet. It is the only point in the entire campus where every student will go every day. That's it. That point because of where the dining hall is. And the other thing I want to mention is look at the green space in front of that building. It's partially obscured by the green text box, but that is a quad that does not exist on this campus today. And if all of us who went to colleges or prep schools like I did, the quad was that place. It was the place where, where all the students gathered, they hung out together, they talked to each other, they threw the baseball, threw the football, played volleyball, whatever it was.
He's asking about, I guess, my assessment of Shorecrest since I've been here and plans going forward for things that I've kind of learned in school. I would say, number one, thank you all for being so welcoming to this community. It's been an amazing transition for myself and my wife coming to the St. Petersburg area, but also to the Shorecrest community. I have already from day one, thanks to Michael, started day one really working with the entire faculty. On the first day of school, having to do some really looking at this idea of how we approach diversity, or how we will approach diversity at the school. So for me, it's been very much an understanding of equity. I think it's very important that when we talk about diversity, that we also put equity as the first thing that we're looking at. It's very important for everyone to feel as though that this is a place that is home. And developing that place of home means that everyone feels as though this is a place they can come to where they can be not only heard but known. And I think that's really important for not only our students but for our teachers also. Different individual things, working with different grade levels, working with different divisions. Actually today I had the entire upper school faculty playing with Legos, which sounds kind of strange, but it was an interesting concept to get them to understand that community is that time where you get together and you actually have a dialogue with your coworkers and stay out of your isolated classrooms. It built in a time for them to communicate with one another. A lot of the initiatives that I have focused on with the school and with the administration has been this idea of understanding self in order to understand others. And this idea of seeing the world through what we call windows and mirrors. A window is where you get to look into someone else's life, and the mirror is where you actually see something reflected in yourself. So those concepts and those ideas are the things that I've primarily focused on so far this year. Going forward, I plan on doing a lot more of those conversations with faculty. Looking forward to having those conversations with parents also. Students, of course, have always been the focus for everything that I do. Basically, had a conversation today with a student who came by to seek me out to just share a conversation that she had around this idea of diversity and being an interracial student. And I thought it was very interesting that she sought me out to have that conversation, but she felt very comfortable enough to come and talk to me about it. And I think that has been my approach to everything, that I am here for the assistance in making sure those conversations are happening, but also understanding that we as a community will work together to make sure that we are accomplishing these goals. On my first day here, I sat with the administrative team and said I would love to do diversity work specifically as a core group. I think it's very important for our administrators and leaders to have this dialogue now, because then they'll understand that the dialogue has to happen from the top down going through. So the administrative team agreed to it and have been doing what we call the S.E.E.D activities. S.E.E.D stands for Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. It's a national program that is about 30 years old now. I'm a certified S.E.E.D facilitator and have developed this program for administrators. So our administrators actually meet once a month to have talks around this idea of diversity, inclusion, and equity as a school, also as individuals, and also looking at how it will affect our school as a whole. The idea of measuring the diversity of the school, I think it becomes a very interesting conversation. I always approach diversity as more than what you see. I think it's very important, yes, to have people from different backgrounds having those conversations. And once again, we're talking about backgrounds, not races. Race is one of those aspects. It's not the aspect that measures diversity and inclusion. So for me, this idea of equity, as I've tied it in to it, means that when we have this area where students can come and have these conversations, that they not only get to express themselves, but they also get to listen to others as they're talking also. So for me, that measure will happen when I am able to see those kind of conversations just happen freely without them being organized as far as students go. With faculty being able to have those kind of dialogue with students just freely throughout the school, and students being able to really express their different point of views without feeling as though if they say something wrong, that they'll be ostracized, or someone will say that it is wrong, that it'll be a natural transformation into a conversation that happens about different points of views and different ways of measuring those points of views, and also expressing them and being understood.
And I've been hearing stories about the community and hearing what makes it special, not from just academics, but from the side of community, the side of equity, inclusion. And to think that, you know, given that for most of you, either your children, your grandchildren, or special friends, family, are here at the school, you've already offered this everything, and that you would want to give more, tells me that I'm in the right place with my family. You know, right now, we're about to do our annual phone-a-thon. There's a way not to get that call. That's the first thing I said. Before you go to bed tonight, think about empowering your teachers to do all the things we talked about just now. Just simply going on. That's it. Make a gift. Because right now, we're at 60% of sort of our family participation at this time of year. And it's really important, this year more than ever, for us to sustain that annual fund goal, get our participation up as high as the trustees, who as of today are 100%. Moreover, this is a time of transformation for us, and it's a time in the community, a pivotal time for us to come together and do some sort of community building. You know, a campaign for a capital project like this, which will ultimately, echoing what Will said, it'll create a place for us to be together, to, as my grandmother says, to break bread and have multi-generational relationships and be a family. You know, it'll provide an innovation center, a place for innovation, a place to do the things we've been discussing tonight. It'll also finally take care of the littlest in our family. The experiential school reborn in the new facility will allow the youngest in our family to have what everyone else already has. You ask how you can help. Well, there are ways to be involved in a campaign that hasn't gone public. And the first is sustaining annual fundraising. The second is to ask questions of me and others. There is a place for everyone in the Transform campaign, and I promise you it will take everyone to make it happen. But today, you know, although we're not public, we're talking more loudly. We have plans to share with you. Ask me questions. Step forward and let me know you're interested. So, for me, being involved is asking that question, finding out your why. Why is it important for us to have a place for us to be together, create a place for innovation, hold that space, rebuild the experiential school, create a community commons as a result of doing a large renovation, and support financial sustainability so that the future of Shorecrest is anchored by the vision and the values that we've all come here to share with our children.
But the other thing I think that is so important of the school, that really builds the school as a community, is having really strong parent, student, teacher, administration relationships. And being open to not listening to rumors, not listening to the buzz of what's going on. If you have a question or have an issue with the school, please talk to the teachers, talk to the administrators before talking to 10 of your friends. I think that something that really does hurt morale at Shorecrest is the Rollout. And so I think that really some of what can help at Shorecrest is that open communication with not just the teachers, but also with your children. I mean, and I'm saying that as a parent. I think that it's always challenging, but I do think that we have to keep all of those relationships really open and strong. And I know that I think the administration would completely agree with them.
How can you be partners? Don't settle for being number two. We clearly want to be number one. And whether it's in athletics, where we ask our kids to make a commitment to be well-trained before a season starts and then to do their best, or whether it's in the arts program, I'm looking at Cheryl, and making sure that our kids are training with every way so that they can be the best possible performers, or if it's in the academic area that they love and that we're providing them with enrichment opportunities, making sure that we don't settle for anything but be the best. To be more. For some children, we know that their spirit is filled. They get up in the morning because they can play a sport. And there are kids in this school who get up in the morning because they're going to be on this stage. And we don't want to make that secondary for that child. We realize that we have a responsibility to provide the best academic preparation so that when our children go off to their colleges and universities, that they can be solid, independent learners. We know that's our core mission, but we don't want to say that the service program or the arts program or the athletic program is secondary, because we know that for some children, that's what brings them to school. The classic Shorecrest kid, and I'll actually use a name, is Garrett Schulte. Garrett Schulte was in the top 5% of his class. He went to MIT. He played football at MIT, and he's also in the theater program at MIT. You know, he had those gifts, and this school gave him the opportunity to use all those gifts. And that would be my wish for every one of the children at this school. One of the girls who is the voice of the video you just heard, I don't know how she does everything she does. She was on the volleyball team, she's in the theater program, she's the chair of Relay for Life, and she's a 4.100 whatever it is student. And at the same time, Tom and I are in absolute agreement. There are times we have to protect the children from themselves and from some of the external pressures that they feel. But we believe that the school, that the mission, and the mission says academic excellence, character development, creative achievement, physical well-being, and the development of a sense of responsibility to the community. If a kid is a full mission kid, they have the opportunity to explore and become great in all those areas. And that's our mission.
I think that it is definitively clear that the program will exist and that the steps will be put in place to ensure that it will thrive. There's a short-term vision and a long-term vision. There are the groundworks for a successful long-term plan for the football team. In the short term, there are some hurdles that we need to address immediately that will help alleviate some of the rumors. But again, as a parent of football players that hopefully want to continue to be part of it, it will be there. And you start to see the groundswell amongst what Dave Wright has kind of coined this virtuous cycle, where you start to bring in, I think you start to bring in some younger kids, they have some success, and then people start to want to be part of the program. So I think definitively is yes, but you know, we can't hide the fact that there are some very short-term issues that around participation that we need to address and hope that we can overcome. So I would say that Mike is 100% behind the program succeeding, and I think we need to continue to quell any rumors that are out there that the program is going to die. So
they're pretty strong rumors.
Well, that's
So,
at least from what we see, it's
I'm not
false.
alone.
There are success programs out there.
Yeah.
There are very success programs out there where you see where it's worked. There's a vast, not to get too deep into what we've been studying, but there's a vast misunderstanding of some of the issues that are around player safety.
Yeah.
There's we're in a cycle right now where there's a little bit of apathy around the program. We need to reverse that, and I think that the steps we put in place to do that.
there are clearly people who would like to see the end of football. We have made a very clear decision, and I've made a very clear decision, that we are going to put every possible effort into reviving that program. The faculty received notice today that we are going to search for a new athletic director. Part of Helen's committee and part of the work that went on with those who were working in the athletic committee realized that athletics needs a boost overall in leadership. And we talked about wanting to start a stronger intramural program. Jeff Rapp, who is our current athletic director, will initiate and expand that intramural program as we look now for a new athletic director. Just today, Ashton Reynolds, who is a junior, his father sitting in the audience, Ashton came over and we started planning how we're going to get the varsity football players to start doing recruitment within the school and within the middle school to expand football programs. Those parents who are coaches are going to meet right after Thanksgiving break to talk about how we can encourage Shorecrest kids who play in that league, but also kids from other schools who qualify for Shorecrest to consider coming to Shorecrest. The third thing we're doing, because it was probably the clearest thing we learned, The person who's making the decision about playing football is not the student athlete. It's the mothers. And so we're putting together a video of mothers who allow their sons to play football. And we're going to use it as a promotional tape to help share why those mothers are willing to let their boys do that.
You asked if the campaign is just a building. For me, clearly not, because it does sit on ground that needs to be brought up. And I mean that. We need to bring our children up, right? In the way this community can come together, and the way they've already shown that they will do so, is that with only 68 donors, we're at $5.2 million. You know, we don't have all the money, and that depends on your investment in the future for our kids.
The places where enrollment can change are primarily in the lower school and middle school. We have a feeling when your boys started in lower school, there were probably 4 sections of 18, 19, or 20 kids in the class, and now there are 3 sections of 17. We have the space to go back to 4 in the lower school. The middle school classes, which are normally 80 to a grade level, some of those grade levels are down into the 60s right now, and that's all kind of the result of the recession and having very small experiential school classes and not being able to add. We weren't adding new students in the lower school. So now with the experiential school being at the largest that it's ever been, with 3 alphas rather than 2 alphas and 4 JKs rather than 3 JKs, that pipeline will hopefully fill in. So the growth should be there. The plan is not to add any more students to the upper school, into those classrooms, unless we add more faculty, which would require, again, this is part of the financial piece that we talked about. It's one of the strategic places. How can we maximize the use of the classrooms and then maximize use of faculty? But there's no plan to expand upper school right now. It's lower school, middle school.
All right, well, I would like to take a moment just to thank you all for being here tonight. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to talk to any of the trustees, to Michael, to Roderick, to Mike. We just want to be open and transparent, and we hope that you come to the meeting that we have in the beginning of the year where we will talk about finance. So thank you all so much.